Hi, everyone. Welcome to our GoodPup webinar on ABCs of Compassion Resilience. As you know, most of you know me. My name is Lisa Martin Garlick. I'm the COO and co-founder here at GoodPup, and I'm here with Kate Hembry, who's our head of training and our regular presenter. But today we have a very special guest, Jessica Dolce. Jessica will do her own introduction, but she is a certified compassion fatigue educator and has been working in this field, coaching people through workshops and things like this for over 20 years. So we're in very good hands. We are hearing from so many of you that burnout and compassion fatigue was a real problem facing your shelters, leading to staffing concerns and just overall morale concerns. And we really wanted to provide a resource to help. So that's why we decided to do this today. A quick reminder for those of you that don't know, GoodPup is a dog training service. We provide positive reinforcement dog training via video chat. We are now partnering with rescues and shelters to provide our services through an affiliate program, scholarships, and through these webinars and thought leadership. So we're so excited. And we are now partnered with over 250 shelters. So super excited to continue our partnerships. All right, I think that's it. We will be monitoring chat and questions as we go. If you have them, put them in and we'll answer as we go and or at the end as needed. So I am now going to hand it over to Jessica.
Hi, everybody. Thank you so much, Lisa, for having me. I really appreciate it. And I'm excited that I get to spend an hour with all of you tonight. So I think some of you know me. I recognize your names. I know some of you have taken classes with me in the past, but for those of you that I haven't had the pleasure to meet yet, hi, I'm Jessica, and I'm the creator of the Compassion in Balance program, which is a collection of educational programs and tools for folks who work in animal welfare. And so I'm really honored to work with many organizations across the world that work with animals in lots of different capacities. Some of you may know me through the University of Florida. I teach for Maddie's Shelter Medicine program. And this year I was really honored to join the Million Pet Challenge and maybe working with some of you through that. In addition, I've worked with all the big organizations that some of you work with or have, done some sort of partnership with, like the ASPCA and the Humane Society and Best Friends. But most of all, I've worked with tons of small shelters and shelters in cities and all of you. And it's just my honor to be in your corner supporting you, because that's me. When I was much younger and I was working at my local animal shelter here in Maine after being a volunteer in the Philadelphia, the Philly Animal Shelter system. I moved up to Maine and I started working in the shelter up here as an animal care tech. Are you having trouble hearing me or seeing me? I just saw something in the chat.
No, that's me. That's me.
Okay.
Just making sure it's set up properly. You keep going. Okay. I'll just make sure everyone can see you. Sorry.
So I just, wanted to let you all know that this work that I do is rooted in my own experience in animal shelters and the experience that I had with compassion fatigue and distress and not having access to resources at the time that were affordable or had anything to do with animal shelter work. And so I'm really thrilled to be here bringing you some of the tools and ideas and strategies that I wish someone had told me back when I was living that life in that photo right then. So that's me, but I'd really like to know about you. And some of you have been sharing where you're joining us from. But if you would like, I'd really love to know, where you live, what job you're doing, what's your role at the vet clinic or the shelter, and how many years have you been working in animal welfare or vet med, whatever or as a dog trainer. I'm really curious what the kind of experience is in the room. So if you could tell me in the chat, that would be really great. I'd love to know what everybody is bringing to the table tonight. So let's see, Brent is in San Diego, 5 years. Okay, HR, behavior, this is gonna go fast. 10 years, 7 years, dog crew, 5 years, 22 years, 29 years, yes. 5 years, that's like 100 years in animal sheltering. 13 years, ED. Okay. Yeah, all right, look at everybody. 45 plus years. I think that takes the cake. 20 years. Look, there's a lot of experience in this room is what I'm getting. 38 years, 10 years, 5 years, 7 years. So adoption coordinators, EDs, director of animal service, animal control. Look at all of this. This is amazing. This is going so fast. Holy cow. Okay, 10 more years. Honolulu, hello. A year. Welcome. Volunteer coordinator, 18 years. Let me see if I can get back up and see some of these that I missed. This is amazing. Look how much knowledge we have in the room tonight. This is incredible. Volunteers. All right. Another executive director, 6 years, 7 years, vet assistant. All right, this is amazing. So we have a really wide variety of roles that you all are doing, from animal care tech up to the executive director. We have folks that have been in the work for a year and folks who have been in the work for decades. And so one of the reasons why I ask is because you all have a lot of wisdom in the room. And so I want to tap into that, and I will be asking you a lot of questions throughout the night. So feel free to really lean into that chat. I'm gonna ask for your feedback, and also we should learn from each other. I don't have all the answers. You all have a lot of the knowledge too. And when we put all of that together in one space, we have a lot of deep wisdom to tap into. Okay, so those of you who have taken a class with me before know that I often like to start webinars with a poem. And the reason why is because reading poetry has been shown to actually soothe our nervous system, to calm us down. And we're going to use this poem as inspiration for moving forward tonight. And so if you will humor me, we're going to take a moment to read this poem. And I'll read it to you. And I just want you to take a couple of minutes as I'm reading to get comfortable. Take a few long, deep breaths, settle into your chair, your couch, your bed, wherever you are, and really listen for the line in the poem that speaks to you and your experience right now. And so this poem is called "For One Who Is Exhausted, a Blessing" by John O'Donohue, who is a brilliant Irish poet who passed away a few years ago. So let's relax together and lean in. For one who is exhausted, a blessing. When the rhythm of the heart becomes hectic, time takes on the strain until it breaks. Then all the unattended stress falls in on the mind like an endless increasing weight. The light in the mind becomes dim. Things you could take in your stride before now become laborsome events of will. Weariness invades your spirit. Gravity begins falling inside you, dragging down every bone. The tide you never valued has gone out, and you are marooned on unsure ground. Something within you has closed down, and you cannot push yourself back to life. You have been forced to enter empty time. The desire that drove you has relinquished. There's nothing else to do now but rest and patiently learn to receive the self you have forsaken in the race of days. At first, your thinking will darken and sadness take over like listless weather. The flow of unwept tears will frighten you. You have traveled too fast over false ground. Now, your soul has come to take you back. Take refuge in your senses. Open up to all the small miracles you rushed through. Become inclined to watch the way of rain when it falls slow and free. Imitate the habit of twilight, taking time to open the well of color that fostered the brightness of day. Draw alongside the silence of stone until its calmness can claim you. Be excessively gentle with yourself. Stay clear of those vexed in spirit. Learn to linger around someone of ease who feels they have all the time in the world. Gradually, you will return to yourself, having learned a new respect for your heart and the joy that dwells far within slow time. And so that is a blessing for all of us who are really exhausted. And throughout tonight, I'll be weaving some of these lines into our strategies and kind of taking a nod from the wise Mr. O'Donohue about how to take care of ourselves. If there was a line in the poem that really spoke to you, I would love to know. You can tell me in the chat. It looks like, was there someone who had their hand up? Let's see, who, maybe Lisa or Kate. I keep seeing a flash of a hand, but I can't quite figure out who it is. All right, so let's keep going. What I'd love to know is, how are you doing in 2022 so far. So like on a scale of 1 to 10, 1 being a raging dumpster fire to 10, you're totally living your dream right now. How are we doing? Put your number in the chat. Give me a sense of where you're at right now. 6, 2, 4, 7, hard 7, 8, 7, 6, 2, 2, 2, 2, 2, a lot of 5s. There we go. A lot of 2s and 5s I'm seeing. 7, 6, 8, 5, 5, 5, 5, 2.5. I like your specificity. U5 shelter 2. I hear that. Depends on the day. So how is it today? 8, 7, 7. All right. So we're swinging upwards. We have a little tail that's going up at the end here. All right. So we're all over the place. Some of us are really feeling good. Some of us are really struggling right now. And certainly some of us are doing all right, but our organizations are not. And so what I want to start by saying is that it's okay if you're not doing okay right now. It would make a lot of sense if you don't feel particularly good, if you're having a tough time. And of course, that has a lot to do with us entering yet another year of life under the pandemic, along with many other things, political unrest and catastrophic weather events and racial violence and war. It's been a really intense few years. And COVID in particular has had a real impact on our levels of burnout and compassion fatigue. The way that it's affected us in terms of compassion fatigue is because we've been experiencing so much stress and distress and grief and loss and trauma exposure in our personal lives because of the pandemic that we've really lost a place in our lives where we can go to recuperate and decompress from the professional stressors. Right? We're just losing all of the recovery time. And maybe we didn't have a lot to begin with, but we certainly don't have much at all with COVID. And so that's really increased the likelihood that we will experience compassion fatigue. And then in terms of burnout, COVID has really exacerbated workplace conditions and systems failures that can lead to burnout. Things like increased demands and then a lack of support and decreased control. And that is really the recipe for burnout. And so someone is raising their hand, and if you could just put your question in the chat, I promise I'll get it, but I can't seem to grab or unmute you. So if you could just let me know what your question is in the chat, that would be great. So, this is important for us to think about because the stress has really been cumulative for us over these last few years. And even if we are essentially coming through maybe the toughest part of the pandemic, like maybe let's hope 2022 is going to be better, we need to take into account that the ongoing prolonged chronic nature of the stress that we have experienced is going to continue to impact us for a while, right? It doesn't just go away, it really piles up. And for many of us, we're underneath a whole big pile of stress. And so we're going to talk about what we can do about that tonight using a very simple framework of the ABCs of compassion resilience. So A is for awareness, having awareness of how the work is impacting us, but also more of an awareness of how we're thinking and feeling, bringing back a sense of balance into our lives. And I'm not talking about like the mythical work-life balance, but having a balance in the way that we're thinking about things, about the way that we care for ourselves. And we'll look at that. And then connection, our connections with each other and our purpose and the meaning of the work that we do. And so I'm going to talk a lot about self-care tonight because it is really important and that is what we have direct control over. But I need to say right at the start that self-care, while necessary, and it is a very important part of resilience, it is insufficient on its own, right? It's not enough that we just take care of ourselves. Our environment matters. And so while we as individuals need to take responsibility for ourselves, we also need our organizations to create healthy working conditions. And when those two things are combined, that's when compassion resilience really has a chance to take hold. So that being said, at the very end of tonight, I'll talk a little bit about what we can do at the organizational level. But for now, I'm going to talk mostly about self-care, individual and coworker care, because we have more direct control over that. Maybe no one else has to change for us to do that. So we'll start there. Okay. Let's start with just a definition of compassion fatigue, starting with that A, awareness building. Compassion fatigue really should be renamed empathy fatigue or empathic distress. That would be more accurate. And you'll start to see people start using that more often in the future. But a simple way of defining it is that it is a profound emotional, mental, physical, social, and spiritual depletion that causes a decline in our desire, ability, and energy to feel and be caring towards others. So essentially, we're giving so much every day, and if we are not able to restore ourselves, that profound depletion starts to erode the very qualities that brought us to the work. We start to lose our empathy for people in particular. We start to lose our sensitivity. We start to lose our energy to do the work. And it's with us 24/7. So it not only impacts the quality of the work that we do, but we bring it home with us, and we might feel really numb, disconnected from our partner, our kids, our own pets, and ourselves. So for both personal and professional reasons, we really want to address compassion fatigue. And even more, I think, kind of broad, but really on the nose way of understanding how the work impacts us is captured in this quote from Dr. Remen, who said, "The expectation that we can be immersed in suffering and loss daily and not be touched by it is as unrealistic as expecting to be able to walk through water without getting wet." And that's just really the heart of empathy fatigue and some of the stressors that we experience. It's really unlikely that you're going to do this work and not be changed by it in some way. It's to varying degrees depending on lots of factors, but almost all of us are changed and impacted by what we witness and do on the job. The good news is we can be changed in some really positive ways, and there's lots of positive impacts, but often we need to have honest conversations about the difficult stuff first and attend to that, and that really opens up the possibility for us to experience resilience and growth. So let me go to the slide. So let's talk about what this might look like. There are lots and lots of different symptoms of compassion fatigue out there. It's a highly individualized experience, but here are just a few possible signs and symptoms. Things like profound physical and emotional exhaustion, feeling sick all the time, like your immune system is compromised, changes in your sleep, like insomnia, using substances like alcohol, drugs, food, gambling, online shopping to numb out, to self-medicate. We might start to become very cynical or hypervigilant, right? We can't relax. We might be feeling very intense, distressing amounts of guilt. We may be experiencing that reduced empathy, that numbness, the disconnection from others. And this is really typical for folks who have been on the job for a long time. So this generally doesn't happen overnight. It happens with some of the years of experience that you all have. We might notice that we're withdrawing, we're becoming very isolated, or we're angry and we're irritated all the time. Maybe we've gone into feeling like we need to be a superhero. So we're overworking, we lose all of our boundaries. We have no life outside of work. We're just taking on more and more and more, trying to shovel, out the water out of the boat. And the opposite of being numb and disconnected is we might become very emotionally reactive and even like emotionally hypersensitive. So there's nothing wrong with emotions, but maybe you are having really disproportionate emotional responses, in your life where, it's, you burst into tears and you're sobbing over something that maybe is relatively mild, right? And so that's the other end of that spectrum. So if you don't see yourself in these symptoms, it doesn't mean that you've not experienced compassion fatigue. It just means I picked the wrong ones to go on the slide. But these are often the ones that I talk about and my students have experienced. So these are some really common things to look out for in ourselves and others. Now we need to talk about what burnout is because it's different than compassion fatigue. So burnout is really about our organization, not our people, not the individual. And that's what all the research is pointing to. It comes from prolonged chronic stress, having too much to do, coupled with not enough support or resources to cope. So it's not just chronic stress. It is also chronic stress and not having the resources to cope with it. And so the kind of trifecta of what causes burnout is increased demand, reduced control, and reduced support. And it looks like physical and mental exhaustion, physical and emotional exhaustion, real sense of powerlessness and negativity, right? So it might be very similar to compassion fatigue. And quite frankly, many of us have both. So the symptoms could be overlapping. But the important thing to consider is that burnout stems from interactions with the work environment, and it's not specific to being in a helping profession. So anyone in any job who's ever worked can potentially experience burnout if they're dealing with too much and they don't have those resources to cope. Compassion fatigue stems from our interactions with the animals or people that we are empathetically engaged with, right? And so even if we worked in the world's best working conditions, if our work environment was perfect and burnout was not an issue at all, we still might experience compassion fatigue because it's tied to our relationship with the animals and the people. And so really what that says about compassion fatigue is that it is an occupational hazard for anyone in a helping profession, right? So it's not an individual shortcoming, it's an occupational hazard. So the other thing I wanted to define, because I think we may be struggling with it right now, is ethical or moral distress. And that's when you know the ethically appropriate action to take, but you're not able to take it for some reason. So, I think about when I was at the animal shelter and an animal maybe would come in as a stray and it was really badly treated and neglected. And we would have to, by law, return it to the owner who would come to pick it up, even though it really ethically felt like the wrong thing to do. We were obligated by law to return the animal to the owner, right? So that's an example maybe of that. So a tension gets created between what we think we should do or what should be done and what is actually being done. And one of the ways I think this might be popping up right now in 2022 is that because we are short-staffed, all that turnover, how exhausted we all are, we may not be able to offer the same quality of care that we were able to offer in 2019. And so I think for folks who have been on the job for a long time, and it looks like most of you were in the field prior to COVID, you might be remembering what you know should be done, the right level of care, and you're not able to offer that right now because of limited resources. And that can create a lot of tension and distress. You want to be doing something and you're not able to do it. So sometimes the constraints are a law, sometimes it's space and time, it could be all kinds of things. So I think that might be adding to our collective stress at the moment. I always think it's important just to mention when we should be considering mental health help, because we don't talk about this enough. The truth is that when you have compassion fatigue, if you start to take good care of yourself and you get more support, typically those symptoms start to reduce, but not always. So if you're trying to take better care of yourself and nothing's getting better, that would be a good time to reach out to a therapist, a counselor, or a doctor. But there are times when that's really important. If you're feeling hopeless, if you're having even a passing thought of hurting yourself or committing suicide, if you're struggling with a clinical depression or anxiety disorder, if you think that you have post-traumatic stress disorder, which can happen even if the trauma is indirect, that's a really good time to reach out for help. Also, if your friends or family are expressing concern about you, sometimes when we're struggling with compassion fatigue, we can't see ourselves accurately anymore. And someone who cares about us can let us know that we've really changed and they're concerned. And then finally, just because we do not have to wait until we are in crisis to reach out for help. In fact, it's a very smart, proactive thing to reach out to a therapist or a counselor when you're doing okay and you want some help staying that way. So that's my little soapbox, because more of us would be happy and healthy if we had someone caring in our corner, but there's still so much stigma around reaching out for mental health help. I also just want to say that, work's not all bad. Work also fills us up. It doesn't just deplete us, it also energizes us. And that can really be captured by the idea of compassion satisfaction, which is the great pleasure that we get out of doing our work well and knowing that our efforts have made a difference. So when we are doing quality work and we know we're having an impact, we feel really good. And that sense of satisfaction is very career sustaining. And research has shown it makes us more effective caregivers, and it tends to reduce our compassion fatigue levels. And so this is something that we can really tap into if we think about the components. We want to be able to do our work well. We need to be competent and well-trained. And then we need help recognizing the impact of our efforts. And those two things combined can really sustain us. But back to the stress part. We need to talk about this cumulative effect of stress. And an idea I'd really like to kind of get out into the world in 2022 is allostatic load. So allostasis is the combination of body responses to stress. It's what helps us adapt, to meet that challenge or stressor, our fight or flight response, and helps us return to a calm state. So it really allows us to be in that optimal functioning zone where we're really flexible and we're able to both respond to the stressor and cool off afterwards. The problem is when we are stuck in chronic stress, we start to live with this cumulative burden of those body responses to stress. And that starts to deplete our ability to handle stress effectively. So allostatic load is what most of us are dealing with right now. We haven't been able to get back to that calm state. And so we might find that we have a very short fuse. We're freaking out about really small things, or we're just not able to handle the same amount of stress or challenge that we were able to handle in 2019. So here's my question for all of you. True or false? I'm struggling to do the things that I used to do easily. So I'm hearing this a lot from people. So if you feel comfortable, let us know in the chat. Do you find that you just can't handle the same workload that you could do in 2019? Do you find that things are more getting under your skin more easily, stressing you out, you're having bigger reactions, or you're just struggling to keep it all afloat when you used to be able to juggle all those things? So I'm seeing a lot of truths, some false, but a lot of truths depending on the day. So what I'm hearing a lot from people who are still really functional is just they're struggling to do the same workload that they did in 2019. And this to me is a real indication that what we used to do, what we used to be able to take in our stride, now is a laborsome event of will. Thank you, John O'Donohue, right? We're really not able to perform at the same level. And that's not an individual shortcoming. That's a symptom of really being under that allostatic load. So yeah, it might be your personal life, right? It could be happening anywhere, but it really is that like, I used to be able to handle certain things and I'm really struggling to do that right now. So things that we used to be able to do are suddenly a lot harder. And part of that is because we have been stuck in survival mode for years now. And so Dr. Eric Gentry, who is a leading traumatologist, talks about how for helping professionals, our quality of life is really dependent upon us being able to monitor and regulate our autonomic nervous system. And our autonomic nervous system is like our built-in alarm. It's our built-in detection system that all day long is scanning both the external environment and also our internal experience for cues of safety or danger. And that's it. It's a black and white choice. Things are either safe or they're dangerous. There's no in the middle. And when our autonomic nervous system detects danger, it will trigger our survival response, the stress or survival mode. And that really has been happening nonstop for us. Our autonomic nervous system has been perceiving all of the uncertainty and unpredictableness and change that we've had to go through as danger signals, not to mention the scarcity, not having enough time, not having enough employees, all of the animals, our concerns about what's happening, our worries, just thinking about our to-do list. All of those things are chronically activating our stress response, adding to our allostatic load, which feels like, the way we might talk about it to each other is, I feel really overwhelmed, right? That's what overwhelm is often. It's this, this is what contributes to it. And when we're in this state of overwhelm, we have no real capacity to cope with the everyday challenges that pop up. So we are emotionally reactive. We are quick to get involved in drama and conflict because we're not thinking clearly and we're overly reactive. We might be worrying a lot. We're not taking good care of ourselves. And so we're really in a place where we're generating a lot more problems for ourselves. And I know, conflict is a big issue for almost every organization I'm talking to right now. And in part, it is because everybody has been under this really heavy load for so long. And so just on a very basic level, two things that we can do over the next couple slides. One is that in order to reduce allostatic load, we've got to turn off our chronically activated stress response. And so one way we do that is at the end of our workday, we need to intentionally turn it off by engaging in 10 or 20 minutes of intentional activity that can move us out of the sympathetic, the fight or flight, into the parasympathetic, the rest and digest. And that could be anything. It could be movement, taking your dog for a walk, talking with a trusted friend, having a good cry and getting a big hug, laughing. It can be deep breathing. It could be some sort of creative pursuit. And it could be a combination of all these things. It doesn't have to be 20 minutes of any one of them. But the idea is long after these stressful events have passed, our workday is over, we're still really marinating in all of that cortisol and adrenaline. And so we need to get that out of our bodies so we can actually get into that calmer state that allows us to repair. And that starts to reduce our allostatic load. The other thing is we just need to be attending to our poor overworked nervous system all day because it's just being triggered all day. Everything's dangerous right now. And so I just really encourage you to take moments to find that sense of physiological calmness. And that just takes 30 seconds, 60 seconds, where we take a moment to calm our bodies, which helps calm our brain so that we're less reactive and we don't make even more trouble for ourselves by getting involved in drama and conflict. And so that looks like, taking a big deep breath and extending your exhalation longer than your inhalation. It looks like vigorously shaking out your arms and your legs, just the way animals shake off their stress. We can give ourselves a good shake. It looks like getting outside and just staring at the sky or some trees for a little while. And all of these things are known to soothe our nervous system, and they don't take long. And just like stress is cumulative, so is this kind of self-regulation or calming of the body. Little moments will add up throughout the day and help to get us out of that survival response. And so I'm curious right now what your energy levels are. So maybe you're functioning all right, you're doing pretty well, but like right now, today, the last couple of days, when you think of your energy level, where are you at? 1, completely, your battery is drained. 10, you are fully charged. You got all the bars. 5, 3, 1, 5, 3, 3, 3, 4. 1 with a migraine, 7, 7, 3, a lot of 5s, a lot of 3s, a lot of 2s all of a sudden. Someone's at a 9, good for you. That's great. I'm really happy for you. I'd love to know what your secret is. Lots of 4s, some 6s. Let's see, another 4, 6. Okay, so most of us are in the middle to the lower end. Like there were some lucky outliers in that, but a lot of us were pretty low down on the energy level. Our battery is definitely depleted and drained. And so that's where we get to the B in ABC balance. We need to talk about self-care, and self-care gets such a bad rap, but that's because we equate self-care with selfishness, right? And if that's what we think, that taking care of ourselves is selfish, then if you are a good person, you won't take care of yourself, right? It makes sense that we would choose to neglect ourselves if only a terrible person would be selfish and take care of themselves. We've created a false choice between these two extremes of neglect and selfishness, right? And there's a whole middle ground here where we can take good care of ourselves. We do not have to neglect ourselves, but that doesn't make us selfish if we're taking care of ourselves. So we just kind of have to work on like, what kind of false, binary choice have we created for ourselves where we are really celebrating ourselves as good people when we don't take care of ourselves, or when our staff don't take care of themselves and are neglecting their needs. Like, let's not praise and celebrate them for overworking and being really depleted, because that just perpetuates these extremes. And so we just want to start with, when it comes to self-care, our biological basic needs are largely not being met for many of us. And if we focus on those biological basics, eating, sleeping, hydration, moving our body, that can go a really long way towards our physical and our mental health. And quite frankly, we're always looking for these self-care hacks and interesting, complicated, or trendy things to do while we do not take care of these core well-being, the cornerstones of our well-being. And so my guess is that for each of you, you have at least one of these that could use a little attention if you were being honest. I mean, you can tell me in the chat, do you honestly, if you're being truthful, could you use more sleep? Or maybe could you use more water? You're really dehydrated. Maybe you need to get some real food back into your diet. Maybe you need to take more bathroom breaks again. Or maybe you've been stuck at your desk like I have for 3 years and you need to move your body again because you're not, out as much as you used to be. So just to say, we make self-care very overwhelming and complicated and expensive and Instagrammable and really for most of us, if we just drill down on some of these, we would start to feel a lot better. So like, no need to make it super complicated. That being said, like, we need to have a little fun again too. It's been a really long few years of not having a lot of joy, not having a lot of pleasure. And so again, I know you don't have a lot of time. I know that your energy is really low. So without adding anything into your life, we can start to bring some joy back in by just slowing down enough to notice those small pleasures, the small joys that happen all throughout our day that we don't notice because those small miracles, we've rushed through them. So I'd love for you to think about your 5 senses and the little jolts of joy that you get when you pause to smell your coffee, or you really tune into the feeling of petting your dog's ear and how silky smooth it is, or the sound of the bird singing, or a cat snoring, or the smell of a good, food coming from the kitchen. These give us like little moments of pleasure, and we miss them. They're happening all the time and we miss them. And this is one way that we can start to refill our depleted well, by just tuning back in. And so I'd love to know, what's something small, usually through one of your 5 senses, that brings you a tiny jolt of joy when you tune into it. Right? Share in the chat if you know. For me, it's like, I love hearing my dog snore. I love the feel of a really soft fleece blanket. I love the smell of a good dish soap when I'm washing the dishes. So candles, the feel of riding your horse, the smell of spring, spending time with your cat, puppy cuddles, chips, garden. Yeah, a good bath, walking dogs, being in nature, hikes, a great laugh. Yeah, your dog's tail thumping when you say, I love you. I love that. Yeah. And so even if we can't get away to do the big thing, like the hike or the horseback riding, like, which awesome, I want you to do it, but let's just say you can't on a certain day. What's like one tiny moment of that? Is there a tree that's beautiful that you can just go stare at for a moment and let your nervous system cool off? Can you be out in the breeze? Can you stretch your body and feel what that feels like? What I'm trying to get at here is that right now we may not be able to add in a whole lot of self-care, but if we approach the things that we're already doing in terms of our basic wellness behaviors and just noticing the little good things that are happening, this can really start to sustain us and refill our well. Swinging on the hammocks, snuggling under the weighted blanket, being in the sun. That's one of my favorites, to go outside and like put my face right in line with the sun and feel it warm my cheeks. The smell of coffee. Oh, I love all of this. Thank you, everybody. These are giving me like little warm fuzzies thinking about all these good things. So going further with this idea of, looking at what we're already doing in terms of self-care, the question I really want you to be asking yourself is my self-care draining or energizing me? Because some self-care does energize us or fill us up, but some of our self-care is draining us. And often that comes down to our screen time. So if you're doing stuff like playing a lot of games, scrolling, texting, binging shows, which like we all are to some extent, I just want you to pay attention to how you feel when you're doing it. Right? We think we're kind of doing that for ourselves, but often we feel pretty depleted after scrolling or watching one too many TV shows. And so we just want to tune in. I'm not telling you not to do this stuff. I'm going to do all this stuff. But when you're doing it, are you making the conscious decision to watch one more show or to scroll a little further or play another game? Or are you just stuck in it? In the automated, another episode is playing, the scroll keeps going. So I just want you to tune into, are you making a conscious decision? And how are you feeling? And if you don't feel better after doing these things, it's not self-care. And so we just want to be mindful of some of the ways that we think that we're caring for ourselves that maybe is draining us. And one area that I really encourage you to look at is your morning. Once the day gets started at work, it's really tough to rein it back in. But when you first wake up, that first half hour or hour of your morning is really important. And most of us are getting on our phones right away. And I beg you to give yourself a buffer, a boundary between you and your phone and email for just a little bit when you first wake up. Right? This can be a big game changer for us if we give ourselves a little time before we enter the work world and the digital world. So just think about what can you do to protect a little bit of your morning, and that can really energize us. The next thing I want to look at in terms of balance is our perspective and what we're choosing to focus on. So in times of stress, our mind really gets overly focused on the negative, and that's very normal. It's a survival response, but we can get really stuck there. And our thoughts and our perceptions are really powerful in terms of how we feel. Just like how our self-care can energize or deplete us, so can our thoughts. And so our thoughts can really drain our motivation, they can drain our resilience, or they can fill us up, they can sustain and energize us. So again, in terms of awareness and balance, I encourage you to tune in to your self-talk. There's no one on the planet that you talk to more than yourself. We are in constant conversation with ourselves. It's an ongoing inner monologue that's happening. And we're always commenting on everything that we're experiencing, whether we're kind of aware of it or not. So tune in to what the podcast is that's going on in the back of your mind all the time. What do you choose to emphasize? And what do you choose to de-emphasize? What thoughts are you turning up the volume and really listening to and hitting repeat on? And what are you kind of dismissing? Just pay attention. And if you can, start to choose some thoughts that you notice sustain you. That doesn't mean ignoring the bad stuff. I'm just talking about counterbalancing the negative that we default to with some intentional focusing on the good or even the neutral as a way not to dismiss the hurts that we feel, but to try to bring some sustenance back to us, to energize us so that we can keep going to deal with the difficult stuff. And so at work, what are you all talking about more? If you're being honest, are you talking more about what's going right, what's going wrong, or quite frankly, all I've been wanting to talk about this week is the Euphoria finale. If anybody watched that on Sunday, I would love to talk about that. But what are you all talking about at work with your coworkers? Is it the good? Excellent. Let's talk about Fezco. I know, what happened to Ashtray? So at work, is it A or B? I'm so happy that that landed for some of you. I was afraid it might not. So yeah, no spoilers, no spoilers. Sorry, everybody, but yeah. So, so what are you all talking about for the most part? We've got a B, we have an A. That's great. What else? About 50-50. Maybe tell me what your staff is talking about too. Let's see, A, B. All right, so far we're getting a pretty, we're getting a nice split. It's going back and forth, A, B, A, B, A, B. Right, B all day kitten season, nice mix. B, it's normal. It's just normal that we talk about the problems because we're in a problem solving business, right? Our job is to find problems and fix them. So it's normal both because of our occupation and because when we are stuck in stress, our negativity bias, which is always there, goes into overdrive, right? And so it really does take an intentional effort to shift to some of the things that are going right or what we want more of in our lives. And so I just encourage you to make an intentional effort to notice the good things that are happening each day that you might appreciate or feel grateful for, or to even if you're really stuck in the negative, which that is definitely my default, what's neutral? Like you don't even have to shift to what's positive, which might feel like too far of a stretch right now, and that might not feel true to you. But what's neutral? What's okay? What's not so bad, right? And this is about training our brain to counterbalance that default, which is so problem focused, which can often drain us, and to notice some of the things that are going well and that we appreciate with the purpose of sustaining ourselves, right? It's not to be a Pollyanna or positive vibes only. I'm not talking about toxic positivity. I'm really talking about a counterbalance so we have an accurate view of reality. And that brings us to accurate expectations, realistic expectations. What does reasonable success look like for your shelters in 2022? It likely will not look like what it looked like in 2019. We have to adjust. And what I'm hearing a lot and what I experience myself is that we have a lot of very unrealistic expectations for ourselves, for our staff, for our organizations right now. And that's creating a lot of unnecessary suffering on top of the legitimate pain that we are in, because we're showing up every day expecting that we should be able to do it differently. I should be able to do more. I shouldn't be so tired. I should be able to handle this. We should be able to take transports again. There's a lot of judgment around what we should be able to do. And it just may not be realistic for right now. things have really changed. And so I just encourage you to play with the idea of trading unrealistic expectations for appreciation of what you have been able to do and what you are continuing to do given the circumstances, for acceptance of your current limited resources. It's temporary. It won't always be this way, but in reality, you may not have the same capacity that you had a couple of years ago. And, we're still going to work to make it better. We're aligning ourselves with where we want to go, what we want to move towards in the future. But we do that by assessing the current reality that we are in. And that reduces some of the suffering that we cause by judging ourselves and others and feeling that constant sense of disappointment that we should be doing things differently. It is different right now. 2022, we're in a different place and it's temporary. It will change, but part of being well is accepting our current reality. And I really appreciate Dr. Clarissa Pincola Este's beautiful passage. Is a long quote called "We were made for these times." And part of that passage is, ours is not the task of fixing the entire world at once, but of stretching out to mend the part of the world that is within our reach. Any small, calm thing that one soul can do to help another soul, to assist some portion of this poor suffering world, will help immensely. And what this is really about is, let's show up and work really hard and understand that we have to let go at some point too. We can't fix everything. We are not responsible for the entire world. We can only do what we can do with the limited resources that we have. And so what I really want you to know is that regardless of the outcomes at your shelters right now, your efforts still really matter. My dog is having a very vivid dream, and you might be able to hear him barking in his sleep right now. So what I want you to feel is that big picture, you are making a difference. Maybe you had a terrible string of outcomes. Maybe things are not what they used to be right now, but overall, big picture, you have made the difference for, judging by the amount of years you all have been in the business, you all have made a difference for hundreds, if not thousands of animals over the course of your career. So you are making a difference, and you have to stay connected to that because it helps to sustain you. Remember, compassion satisfaction is based in knowing that your efforts matter, even if today it wasn't a good outcome. So you need to know why you are doing the work, and you have to help your staff know why they are doing the work. You have to notice when you are doing what you enjoy. There are parts of your job every day that you enjoy, but you're so busy and stressed out that, again, you miss it. So being present for the moments that are rewarding, not rushing to fix the next problem, being there for the good, and focusing on how you show up. Are you showing up with integrity? Are you working really hard and doing the best you can with the limited resources that are available to you right now? And then you can let go a little bit of the outcome because you don't have control over that. You can do excellent quality work. It doesn't mean that the outcome will be positive. We can only control how we show up, the process, the effort. We can't control the outcome, right? We're just not that powerful. So in these really difficult times, when we're understaffed and under-resourced and we're exhausted, we really want to focus on how do we show up, and the outcomes, they'll right themselves in the long run, but right now they may not be what we hope for. And so what I'd really like for you to take a moment to really feel into is, even if it's been a really hard year, even if some of the outcomes have really not been what you want and what you hope for and work for, who have you made a difference for, right? Or in what way have you made a difference? And just take a moment to really feel into the positive impact that you have had despite all of the challenges. And so if you'd like to share that in the description, if you want to honor an animal by sharing their name, if you want to share a project that you've been working on, let's like toot our own horn a little bit. Let's get at that compassion satisfaction by knowing that we are making a difference. Yeah. So yeah, your volunteers, your staff, and the animals. Think, is there an animal in particular? You don't have to name them here, but the more specific we are, the more meaningful it often becomes for us. Jenny, the goodest girl. Yeah. Junior animal advocates, Mr. Blaze, 3 Feet Pete. That's so great. Diamond, the staff and the animals, Sinatra, Bear. Oh yeah, that's great. Sway the doggy. Oh, yay, Brennan, that makes me really happy. I didn't realize that. Thank you. That makes me very happy to hear that. Oh, Betty, ring. So like, let's just honor and feel all that. I just got like wicked warm fuzzies from that. I got goosebumps. And you know, this is about also remembering that it's not all on you. We're part of this amazing global community of people who love and are working to help animals, right? Sometimes we feel very isolated. It's just on us. And the truth is, and I'm really honored to know this because it's my work life, is to talk to all of you all day and know there's so many people making a difference. We're not in this alone. We're one square of a much bigger quilt doing this work. Destiny, this is great. Moose, I really appreciate this. Like, feel all of this. This is why we do what we do, right? And we have to know that we are making a difference in some way. Even if the outcome isn't what we want, we know that we make a difference by showing up and by being caring and offering some calm and solace to an animal before we have to let them go, right? So even if the outcome isn't what we want, it's that showing up. How do we show up for them? You know, even just in the process of doing the work that counts. And so this really brings us to self-compassion. And this is balance because and this is why I named my program Compassion in Balance. It's not about work-life balance. It's about compassion, being in balance. We offer so much compassion to animals and so little to ourselves. So let's heed John O'Donohue, who tells us to be excessively gentle with ourselves. That doesn't stop us from doing good work or trying hard. It actually fuels us to keep going. It's really about positive reinforcement for ourselves. That's what keeps us showing up despite the fact that we cannot fix it all, right? And that is really painful, but we want to keep showing up day after day. So our resilience, our ability to keep showing up, even when it hurts, is based as much in our compassion for ourselves as the compassion that we're offering to those around us. And there's research that backs this up, so it's not just my opinion. So what does that look like? What does compassion in action look like? The most basic way to start cultivating self-compassion is tuning into that self-talk and being nicer to yourself. Talk to yourself the way you would talk to a friend or an animal when they are stressed and suffering. So a simple set of kind of compassionate phrases that you might offer to yourself when you're really struggling or really sad or feeling guilty or whatever you're burdened by is just to acknowledge, I'm hurting right now, but I'm not alone. This is normal to feel this way. And can I just be a good friend to myself in this moment? And what we can do is also add some self-compassionate, soothing touch, soothing our autonomic nervous system. We can place our hands over our heart, just like this, if you can see me, and feel the warmth of our hands and take a deep breath. And this is physical self-compassion. So there are really practical ways that we can soften towards ourselves in our moments of suffering that matter, that really matter. They make a difference. Right? And so I encourage you to just play with that. And another thing that we can do to put self-compassion into action is when you're feeling any emotion, anger, sadness, guilt, whatever it might be, ask yourself, what do I need? Asking, what do I need is compassion, is self-compassion. And that's really about looking at your emotion, figuring out what it's trying to tell you. What do I need? And meeting that need. So I really encourage you to give to yourself whatever small bit, whatever you need, give yourself as much of it as you can. Maybe it's not everything, but even a small amount matters. Don't get into all or nothing. If you can give yourself just a small amount of whatever it is that you need, it counts, it helps, right? And that's what compassion is, knowing what you need, doing what you can to bring that into your lives. And so Dr. Kristen Neff, who's really the powerhouse behind self-compassion research, says that the people who give themselves the emotional resources they need will have more to give to others and can give to others without burning out. So it's knowing what you're feeling, knowing what your needs are, and taking care of those needs, not denying what you need. And so our last bit is about connection. That's C and ABC. We really need each other. Supportive social connections. It's really, the research is abundantly clear that our social connections prevent us from feeling stress. They help us cope with stress and repair after stressful experience, and they increase our overall resilience. So our relationships really matter. So what I'm curious about is at your workplaces, how are you connecting to each other? How are you showing each other some support? What are some of the things that you do to connect with or check in and or support each other right now. And so I'd love for you to share in the chat, because I think we all could use some ideas. So let's see. Yeah. So what I'm going to do, because we're a little short on time, is you keep writing because we all need to hear it. And I'm just going to, and we can go back and look at the chat, but I'm going to keep going in the slides, laughing, sharing songs. Excellent. All right. Here's the thing. We might be struggling with that because we're all not doing so great. And so COVID has really taken a toll, and compassion fatigue really takes a toll on our relationships too. There's a term in nursing called lateral or horizontal aggression. When we are experiencing compassion fatigue, we often take it out on our peers. So not punching up, but going laterally. And we're seeing that in our organizations. And it's really exacerbated because for many of us, we were split into two different teams for a long time. So we've got a lot of us versus them, team A versus team B, in-house versus offsite. Right? And it's like redirected aggression. The bigger problem is outside or how depleted we are, but we take it out on each other. And so just, briefly, it's a 60-minute webinar. I can't go into all of it, but just be really aware. Gossip, rumors, these are toxic. If you're in a leadership role, we've got to squash them, but also we can put, an end to it. Also, we don't want to participate in it with our coworkers. If you're speaking, if you're about to say something, and I'm definitely a complainer, I gossip, I'm human, try to remember to check yourself before you talk. Is what I'm about to say true? Do I even know that it is true? Is it a fact? Is it kind? And is it necessary for me to say this? That can go a long way. And then just to be mindful that judgmental interpretations of your coworkers or other people are often wrong and rarely helpful. And the way that we know that we are in judgment is if we're using words like should, always, never. They always do that. They never do that. They should be doing that, right? That's a clue that we're judging. So we just want to pull back the reins on that a little bit. One of the ways that we can repair some of these damaged connections is with appreciation. And what we know from the research is that if we don't feel appreciated, it's one of the top reasons why people leave their jobs. And when we do feel appreciated, it makes us more stress resilient. So we really want to be generous with gratitude and appreciation. And what I'd love for you to try right now is I want you to think about someone who's really bugging you at work, someone that really, really drives you nuts. And I want you to think about something that they are really good at. So no names, but in the chat, I want you to tell me, what is that person who is so difficult, who you don't get along with, who is maybe the person you go home and complain about? What's something that they are really good at? Connecting with troubled animals. It's often something that might be what we're not so good at. So when I think about my own work experience, it's like being really great with small dogs, and I was terrible at that. So decision-making, they persevere, volunteer connections, they're really organized, they find the joy, they show empathy, multitasking, self-advocate. They're really good at safely handling the mouthy or nippy dogs. Yeah. So do you see, this is a really important thing for us to do, and we can encourage in our staff meetings to do this anonymously. We're not going to say it out loud like we're doing here. We're not going to share names, but it's an important thing for us to cultivate, not just appreciation of the people we like, but of the teams that we are us versus theming. If you have that in your organization, let's take some time to recognize what that other team or department does, that if they weren't doing it, you wouldn't be able to do your work. So let's just that's an easy way to start kind of pushing back on some of that negativity. And finally, in the last couple of minutes, we've got to talk about connecting to the organizational care. Right? It's great. The self-care is great. The team care is great. We really need to look at the whole organization because our well-being is a collective effort. Setting boundaries is often a collective effort. We need policies and a culture that really supports that. And I'm sure many of you have seen this tweet. It's been going around for years, but this is a reminder that your staff is asking for livable wages or more, help, and offering them yoga is probably not going to be helpful for them right now. And I'm not saying that offering them living wages and all of that stuff isn't complicated, but we want to be honest about when we slap yoga or something on top of working conditions that are not sustainable, they're not going to help, right? So we really do need to look at the organization as a whole. And the goal over time, it doesn't happen overnight, is to proactively address and reduce stress and distress at the organizational level by looking at our policies, our practices, and our relationships to do essentially two things: to enhance the support that the staff receives and to reduce or manage the demands on the staff. Because remember, those are the components of burnout. So we really want to look at both of those things. And what I would encourage you to do in 2022, in terms of reducing demands or managing demands, is really to be honest about your functional capacity. Many of you are understaffed, but what I'm hearing from is a lot of organizations have recently become fully staffed. They've done a lot of hiring. So technically they have a body in every chair, a body in every open position has been filled. That doesn't actually equal functional capacity. So I made this little graphic as a way to kind of visualize this. Imagine you have a very tiny staff of 12 people. 4 of those roles are being currently filled by 4 experienced employees. 5 of those roles are being filled by new employees, which is a year or less. It takes at least a year to be competent at your job. And 3 seats are being filled by an employee on sick leave, a new employee who's struggling, and a seasoned employee who's struggling. Right? So technically you have a body in every chair, but you're not at full capacity. You only have 4 people who are fully competent at their jobs, and the rest are doing their best, but are either struggling or they're not fully trained yet. And so we need to be really honest about what is the actual functional capacity of your current group to meet demands. That allostatic load combined with turnover equals a lot of exhaustion and a lot of overwhelm. And those 4 experienced employees are tired. They're real tired because they're holding down the fort. And the new people aren't getting the kind of support and mentoring they need because the experienced people are handling a lot of work. So I just want you to be really aware that we might have to alter our expectations, going back to that realistic expectations. What can we realistically expect that we are able to do? One organization I was working with the other week, the staff was feeling like they were drowning. The organization kept bringing in more and more animals. It was a sanctuary, and they just can't handle the influx anymore. And there was no real sense that their functional capacity was not the same as the amount of open kennels that they have, right? Your capacity is determined by the people, not necessarily the space. And so this is complicated. It's more complicated than what we can do now, but I really want you to think about it. And the way that we can start to address some of this in terms of bringing more support in and reducing some of the demands is really by looking at the 5 freedoms. So I'll thank Dr. Karsten, who I think is in the room, who sometimes talks about this. And so we can just remember that these are the 5 freedoms we work to honor for animals. And if we turn them around for the staff, we're going to be doing a pretty good job. You know, are they able to take breaks? Can they take their PPE off to drink water? Is there someone to cover them so they can take a lunch break? Do they have appropriate equipment and adequate training? Is the workplace safe for them? Do they have health benefits that actually allow them to see a doctor or a therapist more than once? Are we normalizing their stress reactions? Are we normalizing that it's okay if you aren't able to deal with the same amount of work you were able to deal with 3 years ago because of stress injury that you're currently experiencing? Do we have time to connect and have those meals and laugh together? Is there support for all the grief and loss we're experiencing? Are we consistent and transparent in our communications, which reduces stress and anxiety? Do we pay them enough to pay rent in your location? You know, are we looking at how to bring trauma-informed approaches into the workplace? Very complicated. This could be, you know, a 10-hour workshop in one slide. We're just floating it out there. So obviously, if you'd like more support, I offer other resources through the Compassion Imbalance program. So there is somewhere for you to go if your organization wants to go deeper into these ideas. And so in this last minute, I'll just recap our ABCs. We're looking at cultivating more awareness of the changes that are happening within us. We're working to calm our very tired nervous system, to get out of that allostatic load. We want to tend to our biological basics again. Savor the good stuff, be excessively kind and compassionate with yourself, give and receive support, allow yourself to ask for and accept help, right? You don't always have to be the one helping everyone else, and address the overall working conditions. And so before we close, I just want you to think about what's something you're actually going to do after this webinar. It's all well and good to talk about it. What action will you take? Make it doable and small. What's something really little? Can you go to bed 15 minutes earlier? Can you get your phone out of your bedroom? Can you text a friend because you're disconnected, right? Can you go back to taking your lunch breaks that you used to take before COVID, that you just got out of the habit of taking, right? Go to bed earlier, get outside, go for a walk, move your body a little bit. Yeah, get off the screen. I know I'm trying really hard to watch less television at night. Like I'm just watching way too many episodes of everything. So yeah, like I'm working on this too. You know, there's no, I'm in there with you trying to figure it out. Go to sleep, meditate, smile more, watch a comedy. Laughter is such good medicine, and laughter really helps move all that stress out of our body. So it's a good reason to do it. So thank you so much to everybody tonight. It was so much fun to hang out with you and to learn from you. And I know that the chat was so much was going on. I missed a lot. I'll stay to answer some questions, but importantly, if you have a question and I missed it, you can just email me, Jessica at Jessica Dolce, anytime. I'm happy to answer your questions via email. And so, yeah, I'm going to look back, or maybe you can tell me if I missed any questions.
Hi, it's Lisa. I'm making you a host again, Jessica, in case people have questions, but I did turn back my video. And I wanted to say thank you for everyone that came, and a reminder that I will be distributing this on our goodpup.com/shelters website and sending an email out so you can watch this as well. She is amazing. So that was really great, Jessica. Thank you.
Thank you, everybody. I know how hard it is right now. I really appreciate everything that you're doing, and I appreciate your time tonight. Thanks, everyone.
All right, I think we have lots of thank yous. I'm going to stop the recording real quick.